This is the disputed Kashmir region, one of the world's most militarized zones. It is divided between two nuclear-armed neighbors, India and Pakistan. The region has been the source of almost all tensions between Islamabad and New Delhi for decades. Both India and Pakistan claim the Himalayan region in full. The rivalry has worsened the status of human rights. Reports of abuses in the region are rife, and rights groups have struggled to draw attention to the situation. On Thursday, the UN Human Rights Council finally broke its silence on rights abuses in the disputed region.
The political dimensions of the dispute between India and Pakistan have long been center stage, but this is not a conflict frozen in time. It is a conflict that has robbed millions of their basic human rights and continues to this day to inflict untold suffering.
The Council published its first ever report on rights violations in Kashmir, demanded an international probe into abuses by India and Pakistan.
I will be urging the Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council, to consider establishing a commission of inquiry to conduct a comprehensive, independent, international investigation into allegations of human rights violations in Kashmir.
But UNHRC had especially tough words for New Delhi, denounced Indian security forces for killing civilians. Activists estimate that Indian forces killed between 130 to 145 Kashmiri civilians between July 2016 and April of this year. The UN Human Rights Council said that India has allowed its security forces to act in a state of chronic impunity. This drew an angry reaction from New Delhi. India's Ministry of External Affairs said the report was overly prejudiced and turned a blind eye on abuses in the Pakistani-administered side.
We must also remember that the United Nations report, no matter how biased or unbiased the Indian government thinks it is, what they have essentially said is that there is no occupation inside Kashmir, there are no deaths inside Kashmir. The Indian government have refuted the claims inside the United Nations document. The United Nations have created this chart, this paper, this report based on the atrocities that have been happening inside Indian occupied Kashmir. And the Indian government have completely refuted it, calling it fallacious. They've denied the entire report, denied that any human rights violations have happened inside Kashmir. If this is not a call to war, then nothing else is.
New Delhi is having a hard time rejecting the scathing report. These are Indian forces using pellet shotguns against pro-independence protesters in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir. The use of such weapons was another major point in the UNHCR report. Since July 2016, at least 17 Kashmiris have been killed, and thousands more wounded by Indian security forces using pellet guns.
The reality is, it is an indigenous population that have taken to arms, that have taken to rebelling against the occupation, and the blatant use of pellets, the blatant use of weapons against civilians. So we have to resist any form of occupation by whatever means necessary. The UN report clearly states that India are using weapons beyond measure. They are using weapons unnecessarily and indiscriminately.
The UN Human Rights Council said violations in the Pakistani-administered part of Kashmir are, quote, of a different caliber or magnitude. The Council demanded Pakistan remove curbs on political rights. It also warned that Islamabad has used an anti-terrorism law to persecute political dissidents. Although the report was critical of Islamabad, it was welcomed by the Pakistani Foreign Office. Islamabad says it hopes that any future investigation will expose what it calls gross and systematic violations in Indian-administered Kashmir. Observers believe the renewed UN focus on the plight of Kashmiris will help improve their lives. The coming weeks and months will show whether the Indian and Pakistani governments will cooperate with the UN to bring to justice those responsible for abuses in Kashmir.